Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Council's Cabinet meeting today. My name is Councillor Seb Lowe and I'm the chairman of this meeting. This meeting is being web streamed to the public and is being attended by members through Microsoft Teams. Before we begin working through the agenda, I will go through some rules on procedure. The web streaming of this meeting is being monitored by IT services. If at any point there are any streaming issues, then I will be informed and the meeting will be adjourned until such time that the technological issues can be resolved. If during the course of the meeting any member of the Cabinet is having connection issues, then there will be a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the connection issues can be resolved. If following the adjournment the connection issues cannot be resolved, then providing the meeting remains quorate, it will continue. It will be deemed that the member with connection issues has left the meeting and will no longer be able to participate. For all attendees, please could you switch off your microphones and cameras now? For members of the Cabinet, your microphones and cameras should be switched off unless you are speaking. If you wish to speak during the meeting, please use the raise hand function and wait for me to ask you to speak. The voting during virtual meetings will use the raised hand function. I will call on the Democratic Services Officer to confirm the vote. Are there any procedural questions before we move on to the formal agenda? I see no hands raised. I will now ask our Democratic Services Officer to confirm the attendees of the meeting. This will be for Cabinet members and opposition group leaders only. When your name is called out, please confirm your attendance. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So for councillors who are members of Cabinet, Councillor Lowe.
Present.
Councillor Poole.
Present.
Councillor Mrs Crane.
Present.
Councillor Ms Robbins.
Present.
Councillor Roberts.
I believe Councillor Roberts may be having some connection issues. Hopefully he'll be able to join us shortly.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And Councillor Mrs Simpson Vince.
Present.
And then Councillor Roodhouse.
Present.
And Councillor Mrs Brown, who's substituting for the Labour group instead of Councillor O'Rourke.
Yes, present.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, I'm present.
Oh, excellent. Good.
Yeah, just found
good
you.
To see you, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you.
Okay, in that case, we will move on to the formal agenda. The first item is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of July 2020. Are members of Cabinet content for me to sign those minutes virtually?
Yes.
Please indicate with the raising of the hand. Claire, that looks unanimous to me.
Yes, Chair, that's unanimous.
Great. Okay, can I ask you all to lower your hands, please? Now we have apologies. Executive Director, do we have any apologies for absence?
Chair, I have apologies from Councillor O'Rourke and Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Executive Director. Moving on then to item 3, the declarations of interest. First of all, do we have any declarations of non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors? I would take that as a no. And do we have any declarations of pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors? Again, I will take that as a no. And finally, do we have any declarations of interest under notice under Section 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax? No. Okay, in that case, we will move on to the substantive agenda. However, before we do so, I have a brief but very important announcement to make. As many of you will be aware, this weekend has seen an increase in the number of positive cases of COVID-19 in Rugby. These cases have affected a small number of pubs and restaurants and 2 of our schools. Our environmental protection team are working with the affected premises to keep them safe and to trace anyone who may need a test. Throughout this pandemic, residents have done what's right for rugby. They've stayed at home during the lockdown period. They've kept their distance. They've washed their hands. They've worn face coverings where required. And because of that, rugby has seen relatively few cases compared to elsewhere in the county and elsewhere in England. We must now ask our residents to renew their vigilance. We can continue to enjoy going back to school. We can continue to enjoy visiting the shops. We can continue to enjoy eating out if we're careful to keep apart, to wash our hands, and to wear a face covering. If we get a new or persistent cough, a loss of taste or smell, or a high temperature, then we should stay at home, except to get a test. By doing this, we will be doing the right thing for rugby. We will be protecting each other. And I ask all councillors, all community leaders and members of the public to circulate this message as widely as possible to all our communities, young and old, so that we can all do what's right for each other. Thank you. And now, without further ado, we can move into the substantive agenda. So item 4 is question time. Executive Director, do we have any questions?
Chair, we have one question from Mr. Coleman, who's on the line to ask his question this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Coleman, please.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good, okay, because I'm watching the live stream and you're about 30 seconds behind the telephone line. So I'll ask my question. It starts with congratulations to Rugby Borough Council for continued support during the pandemic, particularly in the villages where we've had excellent street cleaning, waste recycling and dealing with fly tipping. And also well done for promoting the independence of local councils to retain and hopefully increase the autonomy of local governance in this county. The background to my question is in February this year, I attended a workshop at Rugby Library that was set up to include the views of rugby as part of the Warwickshire's Heritage and Culture Strategy for 2020-2025. It was chaired by Ayub Khan. And it was most constructive, but given the limitations imposed by the pandemic, it is more difficult for individuals to participate in the development and implementation of this strategy. So my basic question is, does Rugby Borough Council support this strategy? And in particular, from my perspective, the objective under sense of place to promote pride in and sense of belonging to local communities and the county as a whole. How is this covered in the Rugby Borough Council vision strategy? So the strategy document under the heading Sense of Place states heritage and culture promote a sense of identity, providing a focus for growing strong communities and individuals who feel empowered to make choices that affect their lives and giving people a feeling of belonging to a place. So my supplementary question, what is the best way for individuals to engage with Rugby Borough Council with regard to strategic thinking? So thank you for your help with this.
And thank you, Mr. Coleman, for your question. Thank you also for your comments earlier on in the question. I have a lengthy response for you. So officers of Rugby Borough Council were involved from an early stage in the development of the Warwickshire Heritage and Culture Strategy, participating in group discussions and consultation around the themes of the strategy, and continue to attend meetings of the working group, which is developing an action plan to deliver the strategy. The working group last met in February of this year. The council's understanding of sense of place, local identity, and the significance of this for local communities is reflected in the strapline for the RBC Corporate Strategy 2017 to 20, proud of our past, fit for the future, and the commitment within that strategy document to do as follows. Number 1, to understand our communities and enable people to take an active part in those communities. Number 2, to enhance our local open spaces to make them places where people want to be. And number 3, to celebrate our cultural and artistic heritage through Rugby Art Gallery and Museum, the Ben Hall, and events and festivals. Rugby Art Gallery and Museum fulfills that commitment to celebrate our cultural and artistic heritage through a programme of exhibitions and activities, both on site and within the community. A good example of the work within the community is the Good Times project, which uses materials from Rugby Art Gallery and Museum's social history collection to engage older residents, and particularly those living with dementia, through reminiscence, hands-on experiences and conversation. An example from the exhibition programme is the current Small Worlds exhibition, drawn from the social history collection, which uses models and miniatures to engage visitors with the buildings and technologies which have shaped rugby's history, including a model of the aerial tuning conductor from the Rugby radio station, a model of the Rugby railway station gantry, nicknamed the Rugby bedstead from the 1890s, and models of rugby street scenes. An associated social media campaign encourages people, particularly children, to create their own models at home to represent aspects of the rugby that they know, which can be added to the exhibition at a later date. A sense of place and community identity permeates the programme planning at Ragham. Future plans include a community partnership project with Ben Partnership, an exhibition with a ceramic artist working with vulnerable young local mothers group, and projects involving community groups such as Young Carers, Rugby Autism Network, Warwickshire Pride and Black Lives Matter. Rugby Borough Council also uses its planning policies to shape the borough as a place, in particular through the borough plan and associated supplementary planning documents and the forthcoming town centre spatial strategy. Residents are encouraged to contribute towards these strategic aims by responding to relevant consultation and engagement events, such as for the South West Rugby supplementary planning documents, which will be subject to consultation in the next few weeks. They may also raise strategic matters with their elected representatives and the parish council. Businesses and organisations with recognised objectives should engage with service areas relevant to their service. That concludes my answer, Mr. Coleman, and I've been instructed by Democratic Services that I must politely ask you to leave the call at this point, although you are of course welcome to view on the live stream. If you'd like to discuss this or any other matter any further, you have my phone number. Please feel free to call me and we can arrange a time to do so. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'm putting the phone down now. Thank you.
Take care. Okay.
Brian Coleman
is now exiting.
Okay. Moving on then to item 5, the Reopening High Street Safely Fund, plan key activities and spend. Councillor Simpson-Vince, this is with you.
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to move the recommendations for this report. This is a fund that has come from the government to help us reopen our town centre as we all come out of lockdown. So it's looking at public realm, it's looking at signage, looking at promoting the town centre, and any measures that we need to put in the town centre, sort of like the distancing on the pavements, things like that. So it's a welcome fund that we have received and will gladly be using it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson-Vince. Do we have a seconder from the Cabinet?
I'll second that, Chair.
Looks like we have 2, but I think Councillor Robbins got there first, so we'll make her the official seconder. Councillor Brown, do you wish to say anything on behalf of the Labour Group?
Yes, thank you. Just to say, we're really pleased to see that the plans are submitted, and we hope they're successful. Obviously, any development needs to be mindful of individual needs of people, especially those with disabilities and sensory impairments. So we would expect to see as it develops, so even very simple things like hand sanitizers at different heights, or signs that use Makaton and so on. And we look forward to seeing this sort of differentiated approach develop as the strategies are put in place.
I'm sure we would all endorse those sentiments wholeheartedly, Councillor Brown. Councillor Roodhouse, do you wish to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group?
Yeah, yes, please. Just a couple of points, really. Endorse, like I say, what's been said. And I noticed that there's going to be a new website to allow traders to work as well, and I welcome that. And hopefully that'll help the local businesses. One of the concerns I have is around, though, is of independent traders and landlords who are still charging excessive rents for their properties. Not always something we can do directly as a council, but quite clearly I know of one or two businesses, at least one that's packing up now because of that. And I think it's something hopefully we can address as and when the strategy starts to develop, and that we could look to help support these businesses more. But it does give me concern that we have landlords who don't live in Rugby, they're elsewhere, and really are just looking to charge as much as they can, which doesn't always help us.
Thank you, Councillor Roodhouse. In that case, I will put the matter to a vote of Cabinet. Can I ask all those in favour to indicate using the raised hand function?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, that's carried. Can I ask you all to lower your hands, please? Moving on now to item 6, the writing on Dunsmore Neighbourhood Plan Examination Report and approval for recommendation. Councillor Simpson-Vince, this is with you.
Thank you. Right, this is one that's gone through the inspector and now being able to be put forward to referendum, although obviously that won't be till next year. Well done to the team over in Ryton. As someone who's written a neighbourhood plan, I know how painful it is and how many long hours and how much work is involved in this. So it's a really good report. I have read it, I've gone through it. And yeah, well done to the team over there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Simpson-Vince. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Roberts has raised his hand. Does that indicate you wish to second this, Councillor Roberts?
I'm happy to second it.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, do you wish to say anything on behalf of the Labour group?
Just congratulations on a very comprehensive plan. It seems to be very detailed, and wish it every success.
Indeed, it certainly wouldn't win any prizes for brevity, but it is indeed a comprehensive plan. Councillor Roodhouse, do you wish to say anything on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group?
I would agree with you, Councillor Lowe.
Good, thank you. In that case, I will put this matter to a vote. Can I ask members of the Cabinet to indicate their support via the raising of the electronic hand?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Good. Can I ask you all to lower your hands, please? We move on now to item number 7, which is the further engagement public consultation on the South West Rugby supplementary planning document. And again, for the final time this evening, Councillor Simpson-Vince, this is with you.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to put this recommendation to Cabinet. This SPD had quite an extensive consultation back end of last year into the start of this year. There were a few things that came from it. And just to show that, you know, changes do happen as a result of consultations. One of the things is looking at the tariff system. So the tariff system that we're looking at for this development, government guidance has sort of changed a bit. So this now needs to come out of the SPD and go within Section 106 agreements going forward. So that's one of the changes. There's a slight realignment to the Homestead link. And there's a sort of tightening up for the Corston Spinney and looking at Rugby Borough Council potentially taking on the maintenance of the Corston Spinney. So it's not the whole document that's got radical changes. It's just a few key things in there. And we're hoping this goes back out to consultation early next month. I think we're trying to get it out, and then we can get moving with South West Rugby.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson-Vince. Do we have a seconder from the Cabinet? Councillor Poole has indicated he wishes to second the motion. Councillor Brown, do you wish to say anything on behalf of the Labour group?
Yes, pleased to see that adaptations were made in light of a broad consultation. So that's democracy in action, really, isn't it? Which is always good to see.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. And Councillor Roodhouse, would you like to say anything on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group?
Just points really, and they I notice it is going back out for consultation, which is great, and it's up to the communities to react to what's in there now. I think there are still concerns over the buffer zones and probably increasing some of the walking and cycling routes, but hopefully we'll see that all come back into the consultation and built back into the document to make it an even better document going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Roodhouse. And I'd just like to make a point that I've made many times at Cabinet meetings when we address matters of public consultation. I would very actively encourage all interested members of the public to take part in the consultation and make their feelings known. And on that note, I believe we now put this to a vote of members of Cabinet. So can I ask members of Cabinet to indicate their support using the raised hand function?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Excellent, thank you. Can I ask you all to lower your hands, please? We now move on to item number 8, the Finance and Performance Monitoring 2020 to 2021 Quarter 1 report. And Councillor Robbins, this is with you.
Thank you, Chair. Right, well, I think this is the first quarterly Finance and Performance Monitoring report for this year. And it looks at the situation as from the 1st of April to the 30th of June, which is basically the main lockdown period. So the impact of COVID-19 must therefore be considered when we note this report. Although the forecast general fund position is mostly balanced with a shortfall of just £17,000, our portfolios are reporting a budget pressure of 1.274 million, which is being offset by the emergency funding received from government of 1.284 million. And forecast savings of £302,000 relating investments and borrowing linked to delays in the delivery of our capital programme. The future is very unknown and the situation can probably will probably change over the coming months. This will include the monitoring of £169,000 of savings, which are currently amber rated in terms of their delivery, and also the development of the long-term impact of supporting our homeless residents through the recovery, which is currently our largest pressure of £634,000. I'd like to draw members' attention to 3.1 section of the report, which shows the areas of pressure that we are facing, not least of which is the possibility of a second wave of COVID, as has come up this evening with the leader's remarks at the start of the meeting. Members are asked to take note of the general fund reserves and the further risks to the general fund and any other impact that COVID-19 may have and the consequences of perceived risk materialising over the next 2 years. I would also like to draw members' attention to section 3.2. You will note that Rugby Borough Council has been allocated £33.447 million to be passed on to residents and businesses. If you note table 3, summary of grants and relief COVID-19. And on top of this grant relief, Rugby Borough Council has also received 1.284 million in emergency funding, as depicted in table 4. This funding has been held centrally, so both officers and members can easily see the true impact of the pandemic across our services. As was reported in the previous report this evening, a further £96,000 may be received subject to the grant funding agreement for the reopening of the High Street Safety Fund. In addition to the emergency funding, HMHCLG, I can never get that right, has announced a scheme whereby 75p in the pound for sales, fees and charges lost through COVID-19 up to 95% will be allocated. Appendix 1 shows the impact as portfolio level, but in total we are currently forecasting a reimbursement of around 686,000, which would take the total award for us to deal with the COVID-19 to 2.152 million. Loss of council tax and NDR income will play a significant part in the future financial position of the council, and members should be aware of the risks that we face. This also applies to the housing revenue account, although COVID-19 has not had such a significant impact on the HRA budgets to date, but officers are continuing to review the situation. The HRA is reporting a loss of 708,000 at the present. However, included within the rents of 561k is the impact of the decant of Rounds Gardens being faster than we budgeted for. So that's that report. And if members have got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can. And if I can't, then I will give a written report tomorrow. With that, I move the recommendations as printed, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins, for that very comprehensive summary. Do we have a seconder from among the cabinets?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Poole. Councillor Brown, do you wish to say anything on behalf of the Labour Group?
No, not at this stage. Thank you. That's a very full, comprehensive report. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Roothouse, do you wish to say anything on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group?
Just a couple of points, really. Partly echoing the portfolio holders' concern, I think, over the position that we have. Doesn't make happy reading what's presented to us, but it does show starting to show the full impact of COVID, and certainly around the homelessness figure as well, which I think still is great cause for concern as to how that's going to be done. And of course, government is now starting to do a spending review as well. So we're not quite sure what the future funding for local authorities will be. So all in all, I recognise it's Q1, but it's not pleasant reading.
Okay, I will now put the item to the vote of members of the Cabinet. Can I ask you all to indicate your support using the electronic hand function?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. We now move on to item number 8, item number 9, I should say, which is still with you, Councillor Robbins, the initial review of the General Fund Budget 2020 to 2021.
Thank you, Chair. This item deals with the General Fund revenue budgets for 2021-22 and the medium-term financial plan. I'd ask members to note the risk assessment at Appendix 1 and the proposed changes to the process in Section 6. As previously reported in the agenda item 8, COVID-19 has and will continue to have a significant effect on the operational and financial services of this council. Despite the significant amount of emergency funding that the government has provided, the full effect of COVID-19 post-2021 has not yet been realised. However, the council has always been and always had the view that saving for a rainy day is essential. And as a well-run council, and with government help and the prudence of the financial department, we are in a much better position than we would have been if we had not had the general reserves. I would like to draw members' attention to Section 2.2 Economic Outlook, which shows the national picture, and Section 2.3 Economic Outlook, which shows the local picture, charts 1 and 2. And although Rugby has performed exceptionally well pre-COVID-19, it could be that many of the new businesses did not have time to fully establish and therefore are at a greater risk in today's challenging times. Section 2.4 details the government's response to the pandemic, and in financial terms, it has been exceptional, both nationally and locally. However, in spite of the generous relief funding from government, in 2020-21, the county still faces net losses in both business rates and council tax, and Rugby's share of this is around £520,000 as depicted on Table 1. Please note section recovery from lockdown and the impact that the pandemic will have on the medium-term financial plan. It's still too early at this stage in the process to present an updated target. The summary shown on section 4.1 table 2 is the version as presented to council in February, so members can see the scale of the challenge even before the impact of the pandemic. Section 4.3 in Appendix 1 provides a summary of our reserves and risk assessment. This is not a forecast but a summary of the impact. As you can see, there would be a shortfall of 3.2 million in the scenario, and so this will continually be reviewed with the position reported to members regularly. I would now like to draw members' attention to Section 6 budget planning and setting. In these difficult times, it is considered prudent to take a different stance on the budget setting process. Members are asked to consider the proposal to replace the usual cabinet reports with a member working party. This is summarised in Table 3, Summary of Proposals Budget Setting Process. This will give cabinet and officers the ability to monitor the financial position on a more proactive approach, and will also give the opposition members a more active role and input into the process. And it will also include communication with the public and give them also a more active role in the way the council provides its services. It also proposes that the medium-term financial plan be transitioned to a 3-year rolling plan, and this will give all 4 years of the plan income and saving proposals to balance the position. As noted in the report, there are several benefits to this, and of course there are also quite a few challenges. Overall, the council's position is changing daily, and we face some very challenging times ahead. It is beholden to us all to face these challenges and to ensure that the council meets the challenges head on. And again, if there are any questions, I will try and answer them now. If I can't answer them, then I will make sure that you get a written answer tomorrow. Thank you, Chair. Oh, and I move
You move the report.
Move the report. Sorry, I've just lost my bits of paper.
That's all right.
Sorry, remove the. Sorry, my mouse dry. I move the report. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Robbins, for a very detailed and comprehensive summary once again. And also thank you for the prudence with which you and the current Executive Director have managed this council's finances over the years. As you say, these are challenging times that we're in. However, the way in which we've managed our finances up until the current crisis will enable us to weather those times far more easily than perhaps some other authorities out there. So that is something which you and the Executive Director should be commended for. Do we have a seconder from among the Cabinet?
I'll do it again, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Poole. And Councillor Brown, do you wish to say anything on behalf of the Labour Group?
Yes, just to note the continued difficult, very challenging context that that this is being developed in, where we're dealing with so many unknowns here. The notion of a member working party, I think, is, as far as you can say things are positive at the moment, is a positive development, because it gives that opportunity to be more flexible and respond to need as and when things happen. And we're delighted that the proposal is to make it a cross-party working party too. So in difficult and challenging circumstances, that's a new and thoughtful way of working that we welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Indeed, and in difficult and challenging circumstances, it often makes sense to work on a cross-party basis. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Roodhouse, do you wish to say anything on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group?
Just to echo what Councillor Brown has said, really, that Section 6 lays out a new way of working, which I've talked about before in previous budget settings, but this time we find ourselves in exceptional circumstances where I think the whole of Rugby Council does need to pull together to get through this.
Indeed, and I'm sure all other councillors would endorse those comments, Councillor Roodhouse. Could I now ask members of the Cabinet to vote on this matter? Can I ask all those in favour to raise their hand?
And that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. That's carried. Moving on then, we have item number 10, which is a notice to exclude the public under Section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972. To consider the following resolution. Under Section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds they involve the likely disclosure of information defined in paragraphs 1 and 3 of Schedule 12A of the Act. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Robbins seems to be seconding. Can I ask members of the Cabinet to vote, please?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. In that case, that concludes the public part of the meeting. Can I ask IT to end the live stream and confirm when it has been done, and then we can move on to the items on blue.